The Eiffel Tower is just thin pieces of copper on the outside, and it has a structure of steel or cast iron on the inside. Now, here, this shows you a picture of the Eiffel Tower. This is when it was they first put it together in France to be sure it would all go together. And they took it apart and they sent it to America. This is the picture in France here. This is actually, I believe this picture is from the 1889 exposition. They put it together to show people what they were going to do. And if you go inside, I've been inside, you could walk up this little narrow staircase going all the way up to the top, and there are little windows up there around her crown where you can look out over the world. From the inside, it's Eiffel's engineering creation. From the outside, it's a traditional statue. So Eiffel, by the time he got to designing this tower, did I say designing the tower? Did Eiffel design the tower? Well, he had developed a construction company. And this construction company took care of construction and engineering in many places of the world. France, these bridges, Portugal, bridges, Hungary, the train station, Chile. He designed a church for Chile out of cast iron. They made it in France, they put it on a boat and sent it to Chile in South America. Things in America, also in Panama. France was building the Panama Canal and they ran into problems with engineering, so they asked Eiffel to help them. Basically, what we see here is the beginning of these international engineering and construction companies. They're a big part of our life now. For example, outside you see the MRT. Who designed the MRT? Well, there were a lot of Taiwanese people from Taiwan who worked on it, but it wouldn't get built without international consultants. If you look at, and it's not just Taiwan, you look at all these buildings in the Middle East, buildings, even in America, you will have English firms, French firms building buildings in America because they have the technological expertise. This began in the late 19th century, and the Eiffel Tower was part of it. Now, I'll tell you, after the Eiffel Tower, Eiffel basically retired. He had financial problems with the Panama Canal, and so he stopped being an engineer. He left his company, but he didn't, like Paxton, become a conventional bourgeois architect. He continued to do scientific research in aerodynamics. Aerodynamics, 中文是什么？有没有? Does anybody know? Aerodynamics, it studies the effects of wind on things. If you're going to design a car or a building and you need to calculate how does the air affect it, you use aerodynamics. And Eiffel did experiments. Where? In the Eiffel Tower, of course. He'd take things from the Eiffel Tower and he'd drop them. And he used this way to measure how the air affects things. He also experimented with weather, to do research in weather. Where did he do this research? In the Eiffel Tower. He had a station that would record the weather at the top of the Eiffel Tower. But let's look at this Eiffel Tower. Now, first of all, the Eiffel Tower, as I said earlier, it was not really designed by Eiffel. It was designed by a couple of engineers in his firm. They had this design, the two of them worked it out. They showed it to Eiffel. Eiffel thought this was great. It wasn't his idea, but he knew a great idea when he saw it. So he bought the idea from them. He paid them money, and he said, my company will use your idea. Then Eiffel took this idea and he went to the committee that was designing the tower. We don't have to take a break, do we, woman? Do we take a break? No, we just go straight through till 12 o'clock. Okay, yeah. Okay, so anyway, so Eiffel promoted this idea. He developed it and he sold it. And then his company built it. And after it was built, you had to pay money to go in there. You still do have to pay money to go in there. I've never been in there. It's kind of expensive and you have to wait a long time. But his company earned money from people going into this building. Now, this is what Eiffel did when he wanted to sell his building to the committee that was going to accept it and also to all the people in Paris. He said, the material of which this tower is to be built was determined not only by the fact that it rendered construction possible. That means it was what you needed to use to do it, but also because it would supply a brilliant example of a modern industry in which France has been more especially distinguished since its introduction. Now, what he's talking about here is not just cast iron, it's also steel. Originally, they wanted to build the Eiffel Tower out of steel, which is a more modern, a stronger material than cast iron. And France was more advanced in using steel than England was, but they didn't have enough steel to build it. Why? If you're going to build this tower, you can't say, oh, we're going to build a cultural icon. Because they don't know what it is. You can't say we're going to build something that will make you famous, because they don't know it will make you famous. What he said was, it's going to be an observatory. It'll be a laboratory for science, okay? This is pretty good. That sounds pretty good. If it's a laboratory for science, well, it sounds like it's worth spending money for. And it will have a usefulness that's the true source of my inspiration. Eiffel is telling these people, this tower is not just a symbol, it's something you can use. It will be used because he was going to put, well, he did put things to measure the weather up in the top of the tower. Later on, they used it for radio broadcasts. They used it for observatories. It was actually useful for many practical things. And, above all, here he says, my object was to show the whole world that France is a great country, and she is still capable of success where others means England, had failed in building the world's tallest building. So, what did this building look like? Well, here are some pictures of the construction. It ran from January 1887 to March 1889, about 2 years. The Crystal Palace took 8 months to build. This took 2 years, but it was very well organized. This just is a brief outline. You can see here they're building the bottom. Then here they have some temporary support here in the middle. After they get up beyond this level, they take this away. They're moving themselves up to the top, and they finally finish it. The process of construction was very effective. There were, I think, there were very few people who were injured in the process of constructing this building. And when he built it, it was not just the structure. Eiffel had to design, or have his people design, slanted elevators that would take you up this far. So these buildings are not just technical problems, they're also, for construction, they're also the environment. For example, Paxton, when he designed the Crystal Palace, there was no air conditioning then. If you build a greenhouse, you have to take out the hot air. Paxton solved this problem in the Crystal Palace, and Eiffel solved the problem of getting people in a slanted elevator up to this level here. Now, this is what it looks like now, or this is what it looks like looked like in the fair. You have here's the Eiffel Tower in the middle. Here are many pavilions for different for different countries and different industries. Here's a giant building, I'll show you this building later, a giant building that shows off the most modern machines. And if you go to the top of the tower, I've never been there because you have to stand in line for a long time and it takes a long time to get up there. But if you go there, then it's actually pretty amazing what you see. It's worth seeing to understand how it could impress people so much. This is what you see from the building. You look around and you've been up, some of you have been up the Taipei Yiling Yi, but in Taipei there are a lot of tall buildings, there are a lot of modern buildings. Paris is an old city. When this was built, everything in Paris was about 5 stories tall. And even now, you look like you're flying in an airplane. It's amazing the contrast between this modern building and the old Paris that's around it. The Paris of culture and art and history and, you know, all that French stuff. And this new, modern, world's tallest building. Well, what effect did this have on visitors? Well, not just the Eiffel Tower, but the fair itself was really impressive. Because this wasn't just showing a lot of machines, a lot of industrial products, a lot of statues. It was showing cultures of different countries. This was more like the Shanghai World's Fair, where you see many different cultures coming together. This is what somebody wrote after seeing the fair. This is Goncourt, who keeps he's an artist. He says, this fair has no reality. It's almost as if one were walking in the set of an Oriental play. Here you can see, this is one of the streets in there. You can see here, this is a temple from Cambodia. This is something from North Africa here, these designs here. This is a building from France. It's all of these cultures from all of these countries all over the world mixing together. This is really one of the first examples of globalization, the globalization of culture. Now, here, this is one of the buildings for the colonies. Some of the colonies would have their own streets, but this building here would have exhibits for all the different colonies inside. You can see this, I can tell this building is built out of cast iron. It doesn't look like it, but inside it has a cast iron structure. But outside these buildings, there were streets. Streets where people could walk around. They could feel like they were in a bazaar in North Africa or India or Vietnam. They could, here you see Parisian ladies. They're sitting at a table and they're eating maybe barbecued meat or something. You have these tables, they're Indian designs, Arab lamps hanging around. It was a completely new environment. And you could buy things too. You could buy Arab clothes or whatever. Souvenirs to take home. They had whole streets. These are drawings from the time. They brought camels from North Africa, donkeys. I don't know whether the donkeys came from North Africa, maybe they were French donkeys, but not only that, but they brought people from Africa, from Asia, to come here and show the French people what were these cultures like. They had music. This is Javanese dancers, and the dance performance was one thing, but what really impressed Paris was the music. You can see back there, there's a man who's hitting little gongs, little things like little bells. This is a traditional music from Indonesia called Gamelan. This was the first time Oriental music had come to the West. Because France had colonies there, they brought the dancers and the musicians over. Now this music was, to France it was revolutionary. And this music affected